Hi, it's Carly McAvoy talking about solving quadratic equations using the quadratic formula. These are the 4 problems I'm going to solve in this video. But first, I want to look at the quadratic form equation ax squared plus bx plus c. A is the coefficient of the second degree term, b of the first degree term, and c is the constant. And when you look at the formula, over here, x equals negative b, that's the opposite of whatever your b is here, plus or minus, that's how we get 2 different solutions. The square root of b squared minus 4ac, a being the coefficient of the second degree term and c being the constant term, all over 2a. So that's the formula we're going to plug into. Whenever we want to solve a quadratic equation, we want to make sure that our equation is equal to 0. So for this first one, the first thing I'm going to do is move that 1 over to make it negative 1 so that I can then solve the equation using the quadratic formula. So I'm going to write down, I think this is a good idea for everybody, write down what your A, B, and C is. A is 2. B is negative 9, and C is negative 1. So I have x equals negative 9, which is 9, plus or minus the square root of b squared, which is 81, minus 4 times A times C, all over 2 times A. Well, A is 2, so 2 times 2 is 4. And what I want you to see here is I have a negative and another negative. And since I have 2 negatives, that's going to make a positive. So I have 9 plus or minus the square root of 81 plus 8, which is 89, and that's over 4. Now, if you're not sure if 89 can be simplified or not, because remember when we did another video where we said you can't leave a radical like that if it's not simplified, you can just go into your calculator if you have a calculator that'll do this for you. Just put in the 89 and hit enter. It does not simplify. It's still the square root of 89. What if I did one that would be simplified, like 75? Then it would show you that's 5 square root of 3. Okay, what if I wanted a decimal? I would put in a point, right? And I would get the decimal answer for that. But we don't usually want decimal answers when we're solving these. We want the exact answer, which is the radical form. So then I could say this is my final answer. There's 2 answers in there. Or I could say this is 9 plus the square root of 89 over 4 and 9 minus the square root of 89 over 4. There's 2 answers in there, whichever way you write it. If you're on paper, this is a nice way to do it. Sometimes on the computer, you have to separate them out. This one's ready to go. A is 3, B is negative 20, and C is negative 7. We have x equals negative b, so the opposite of b is 20, plus or minus the square root of b squared, which is 400, minus 4 times 3 times negative 7. So make sure you're using the signs and putting those signs in there correctly. All over 2a, 2 times 3 is 6. Now you can simplify inside the radical separately, all at once, whatever you want to do. I've got plus or minus over 6. So I'm going to simplify mine. I'm not going to put a decimal in because I don't want a decimal answer. I just want to see what that would simplify out to be. So second function radical, 400 minus 4 times 3 times negative 7. Make sure when you put the negative in, you use the negative sign, not the subtraction sign. Negative 7. So that's what I have in there, and I'm going to hit enter. And that's just 22. That's the perfectly worked out nicely. So I have 22. And so then I have 2 different solutions that I want to look at. 20 plus 22 over 6 and 20 minus 22 over 6. Well, 20 plus 22 is 42 over 6, which is 21, which is 7, right? Yeah. Took me a minute there. And then 20 minus 22 is negative 2 over 6, and that's negative 1/3. So we have 2 solutions, which is what we expect unless we have a perfect square trinomial, and that's going to be our 2 answers. Okay, number 3, again, we need to move those things to make that have equal to 0. So when I move negative 2x, I get positive 2x. And when I move positive 2, I get negative 2 because I'm doing the opposite as I cross the equal sign. These all have a common factor of 2. If I wanted to, I could just divide everything by 2 and get x squared plus x minus 1 equals 0. And that just gives me smaller numbers to work with. But if I didn't want to do that, I could have used the numbers as given. A is 1, B is 1, and C is negative 1. So I have x equals negative b, that's negative 1, plus or minus the square root of b squared, well 1 squared is still 1, minus 4 times a times c, all over 2 times 1, which is just 2. And so I have negative 1 plus or minus, and this is negative 4 times negative 1 is positive 4 plus 1, square root of 5, all over 2. I know square root of 5 can't be simplified. I'm not even going to write that out in 2 separate pieces. I'm just going to stop there. What if I had done the other numbers? Would I get the same answer? Well, let's see. If I said A is 2, B is 2, and C is negative 2, I would have gotten negative 2 plus or minus the square root of b squared, which is 4, minus 4 times 2 times negative 2, all over 2 times 2, which is 4. Well, inside here, I have negative 4 times negative 2 is positive 8, times 2 is 16, so I get the square root of 20 all over 4. And 20 looks like this, square root of 4 times the square root of 5, right? So 20 is actually negative 2 plus or minus 2 square root of 5 over 4. And then I say, well, I have a common factor of 2, goes in here once, goes in here once, goes in here twice, and look what I get. I get the same answer. I just had to reduce at the end. So reducing at the beginning just saved me time. So you can always divide out if it makes things easier for you in the beginning. Here it wouldn't make things easier because we don't have a common factor. We would just get crappy fractions, and we don't want that. So A is 3, B is negative 20, and C, whoops, I copied down number 2 again. Ugh, heavens. Let's try this. Actually, we have negative 10x. The problem should be 3x squared minus 10x equals 25. And so I have 3x squared minus 10x minus 25. This should be 10x, or just 10, sorry, and C should be negative 25. So I had to move that over to make that happen. Now I have x equals negative b, that's going to be positive 10, plus or minus the square root of b squared, which is 100, minus 4 times a times c, all over 2 times a, which is 6. Okay. I could go through the motions of simplifying that, or I could let my calculator do that for me. I have skills, but you know, sometimes I don't want to do that. So 100 minus 4 times 3. Oops, I need to go times 3. Times 3 times negative 25 is 20. So that's exactly 20. Nice. It's always nice when things work out nicely. You can see 4 times 5 is 100, is positive 100, times 3 is 300, plus 100 is 400, square root of 400 is 20, la 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 la. The computer did that for us. We have 10 plus or minus 20 over 6. So we have 30 over 6, or minus is negative 10 over 6, and that gives us 5, or negative 5/3. And that's using the quadratic formula to solve equations. Have a great day.